Kingdom Hearts is a franchise that combines the worlds of Disney and Final Fantasy to create a memorable gaming experience. And speaking of Disney, last time we saw which Disney teams can make it through Kingdom Hearts 2, but now it's Final Fantasy's turn. Let's see which beloved Final Fantasy characters could clear Kingdom Hearts 2. Now for first-time viewers who may not know what's about to happen, I'm going to be taking characters, in this case Final Fantasy characters, and having them do a gauntlet run through the worlds of Kingdom Hearts 2 to find out who can reach the end of the game. There will be teams of 3 since that's the party size for Kingdom Hearts 2, and will be basing their power off their own games that they come from, not what they can do in the Kingdom Hearts series of games. So for example, Squall's power will be based off Final Fantasy VIII and not Kingdom Hearts 1 or 2. And just a heads up, I won't be counting anything from spin-off Final Fantasy titles either, like Dissidia for instance. We're going to stay strictly to their mainline titles. Now with that explanation out of the way, who will I be choosing to participate? Well, for now, I'll be sticking to Final Fantasy titles that do have reps in the Kingdom Hearts series. So I'll be creating teams from Final Fantasy VII, 8, 9, and 10. And since we are limited to a 3-man team, some characters will be left out sadly, but who knows, maybe they can pop up in a future video. Also, Atlantica will be a mulligan world since a lot of characters will just drown there. Now, just before we begin, there will be spoilers from the Kingdom Hearts series and the corresponding Final Fantasy games, so just a heads up. Now let's start with our first team being Final Fantasy VII. This was tough because there are so many great characters to pick from for Final Fantasy VII, but our main team will consist of Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. Now, Cloud's primary weapon is his Buster Sword, Aerith has her staff, and Tifa has hands that are registered lethal weapons. Now, when dropping them into the Land of Dragons, regular Heartless are enemies all 3 should be able to handle, even on their own. All 3 of them also have access to magic thanks to a little something called Materia. It lets them unleash so many spells and summons, some of them being spells that show up in the Kingdom Hearts series as well, and stuff like Ultima, Comet, and Knights of the Round. Cloud is also very efficient at close combat, and it's his bread and butter, and the same goes for Tifa. Aerith may not be on the same level as those two in hand-to-hand combat, but that doesn't matter with her magic abilities, and the other two wouldn't let any enemies get to her anyway. The fight with Shan Yu would be over in an instant. Shan Yu has no physical feats that are on the same level as Cloud. He would just get blitzed and killed instantly, without the other two even having to lift a finger. Honestly, any one of them could have defeated Shan Yu. With the skills and abilities these characters possess, pretty much none of the Disney World bosses would be able to even scratch them, let alone put them in any real danger. Whether it's Beast Castle, the Pride Lands, Halloween Town, the Caribbean, this team clears all without breaking a sweat. Even some of the most powerful Disney characters that in our last video gave the Disney teams a tough fight, like say Cerberus and Hades, they couldn't touch these guys. They've fought enemies pretty much the same size or arguably bigger than Cerberus, and while Hades is a god, his attacks lack the firepower necessary to put down anybody on this team. Not just this team, but all of the Final Fantasy characters have access to Shell and Protect on their team, which would greatly reduce the power of Hades' fire attacks. Although I have to say I would look forward to them going to Disney Castle. It would probably be so trippy for them to see how they used to look. After mulling over how this team would defeat the Heartless mobs and Disney bosses easily, what about the organization members? A roadblock for many of our Disney teams was Zaldin, but could this team defeat him? Well, Zaldin has incredible speed and hard-hitting wind attacks, but so does Team FF7. In fact, again, speaking to how fast Cloud is, he could keep up with Sephiroth, who we see here is doing stuff like this. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty fast. So Cloud should be able to outspeed Zaldin and just relentlessly attack him. Cloud's even sliced buildings and other dense objects before, like slicing through butter. Cloud could just parry Zaldin's attacks since Sora was able to, and in terms of physical capabilities, Cloud's got more muscle on him than Sora. Hell, even Tifa could beat the crap out of Zaldin. Tifa's hits are enough to drop huge enemies with just a few or even one heavy blow, and that's even before you throw in materia to amp up their strength. As for Aerith, she'll just keep the party healthy and safe. But if she did want to help on the offensive, she could summon Bahamut and just show Zaldin what a real ultimate attack looks like. I think it's safe to say this team could definitely obliterate Zaldin. The next big organization boss fight would be against Xigbar. Pretty much the same premise here. Cloud could blitz Xigbar so he never gets a chance to shoot anybody. Even with Xigbar creating a large distance to snipe at Cloud, he could just follow him through the air and then take him out. And with the stop spells, Xigbar literally can't defend himself from the barrage of the three of them that would put him down. Even if Xigbar got off his ultimate move, just running can dodge this attack, so with the speed these characters move at, none of them are going to be hit by this. Next is Syx, and his whole thing is speed and power, and let's give Syx the benefit of the doubt and say he'd be able to hold down Cloud. That still leaves Tifa and Aerith, who are free to hit him with their best physical and magic attacks to end him. And Syx couldn't even target Aerith first, simply because Tifa and Cloud wouldn't let him. Luxord is a bit trickier. If he did manage to rid Cloud of Tifa and Aerith and turned him into a dice block, how would he fare? Well, depending on what Cloud is carrying, he may not even turn into a dice block. You see, in the Final Fantasy games, there's a thing called a ribbon that can stop status effects from, well, affecting you. It's something that many people bring to boss fights, especially when dealing with Sephiroth, since he can turn you into a frog if you don't bring it. And if that did happen, Luxord would collapse faster than a house of cards. But if it didn't work, Cloud could still just Oonga Boonga himself at Luxord until he comes out of dice block form, similarly to how Sora would have done it. And even when playing Luxord's card game in order to defeat him, Cloud could still win. It's not like Cloud has no idea how to play card games. At least he better be. I didn't drop all that time in a Queen's Blood for nothing. So Cloud wins this fight as well. Now it's Xemnas' turn. For the one-on-one battle with Xemnas, Cloud should take this. Sure, Xemnas can ensnare Cloud for a bit and he can port around while fighting, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing Xemnas has in this fight is on the same level of anything Cloud can do. In fact, when Cloud runs up the building to attack Xemnas, there's nothing to stop him from simply omni-slashing him, and even that might be a bit of an overkill. As for the group fight, Cloud already was above Xemnas in speed and power, and if you throw in both Tifa and Aerith now, it becomes mercilessly easy. The first few phases with Xemnas being idle makes him a literal sitting duck for the three to wail on. As for making it back to Xemnas when he throws them away, they could simply jump and glide back. Heck, Cloud could even throw Tifa and Aerith back with his Buster Sword using thrust. So I don't see any potential problems so far. With the last fight, you have Xemnas who moves around quickly, but so do Cloud and Tifa. And when Xemnas snares one of them, the only person he may be able to hit is Aerith, and even then, she would be only stuck for a few seconds before Cloud and Tifa saved her. And the final barrage of attacks would be doable for them to deflect, and they could use Reflect Materia to be safe from them as well. So after everything is said and done, the Final Fantasy VII team should be able to clear Kingdom Hearts 2. Now it's FF8's turn, with our team being Squall, Selphie, and Rinoa. Squall is of course the front line, with Rinoa bringing up the rear with powerful magic attacks, and Selphie curing and shielding the party as well. Selphie also has the added benefit of having extremely powerful overlimit attacks. I know a lot of characters in this game have powerful overlimits, but this one is extremely stupid. But trust me, we'll go more into that later. Now, Squall using his Gunblade can mow down pretty much anything in his way. With every slash, he can also do an additional damage output by pulling the trigger, cause you know, Gunblade. And Rinoa would have access to a lot of the most powerful spells in the game, like Ultima, Quake, Holy, the list goes on. To be fair though, all of them have access to these spells, but Rinoa also would have the added benefit of having her angelic form, which would up her damage immensely. So with these two being the primary attackers, nothing is gonna stand in their way. The Land of Dragons, Beast Castle, Olympus, and all the other Disney worlds will be promptly saved by how powerful this team is. Demyx wouldn't be able to put up a close-range fight with Squall, especially with all of Squall's formal training, and going toe-to-toe with enemies like Cypher, who cut Odin in half. It's like he was made of soft butter. I know one guy who's not waking up from the Odin sleep. The 1000 Heartless battle would be funny to witness as well, since Selphie could just use Rapture and it would just get rid of all the enemies. At least that would save them some time from mowing them down. Zaldin, being a wall for the Disney teams, would get walled by Selphie, upping the party's survivability if he did actually get in some hits. Selphie could also use full cure to keep everyone healthy as well. And with the onslaught of physical and magic magic attacks and Zaldin not doing enough damage to put any of them down, he's gonna get toppled. Xigbar, Sykes, and Luxord would all fall to this team as well. Squall's overwhelming power coupled with his limit Lionheart would do so much damage that it would decimate these three when it lands. Now for that selfie attack I was going to explain later. You see, Selfie has this extremely overpowered attack called The End. The limit can immediately win them a fight. It's actually hilarious. She spawns a happy flower field from a Disney film, then it just reads The End like the closing of an old fairy tale picture, and the enemy just up and dies. Whew. Good thing she never went all out on Destiny Islands. As for the first Xemnas battle, Squall is used to fighting in high-speed battles, so he can match Xemnas in a duel. And Squall has felled many overpowered enemies, so Xemnas would be in his wheelhouse to deal with. He's also got access to haste and slow, which would create a huge speed gap in Squall's favor. And Squall does have other powerful attacks that he can use, like Rough Divide, Fated Circle, and Blasting Zone. And like I mentioned earlier, Squall has access to literally every spell in Final Fantasy VIII. And with the laundry list of overpowered spells in that game, Xemnas is done for in a one-on-one fight. So with what I've explained, I think it's safe to say the remaining Xemnas fights won't go the way Xemnas wants. All three of these characters have access to the best spells in their respective game, and all of them have overpowered limits that would either deal heavy damage, making Xemnas way too weak to fight back, or it would instantly kill him no matter what stage of the fight they're at. So congrats Team FF8, you definitely clear Kingdom Hearts 2. Next, repping Team FF9 is Zidane, Vivi, and Garnet. Now this team is pretty balanced, with us having a frontline close combat fighter with Zidane, an impressive and awesome black mage with Vivi, and a healer and basketball player Garnet. Now, when dropping them into the Land of Dragons, just like the teams we've had so far, they could also get through this pretty quickly. Zidane is extremely agile, and with that, he could evade and attack while jumping around and swinging like the monkey he is. Speaking of which, he kinda does remind me of Kid Goku. It's just he pats them on the butt instead of the... And his attacks can hurt, don't let his size fool you, and that goes double for Vivi. Vivi has so many over-the-top spells that can just obliterate you on impact, which is definitely living up to the whole Black Mage thing in Final Fantasy. And yes, while Shan Yu can be quick himself, he's nowhere near as agile and creative with his attacks, and he has no way to block Vivi's incoming magic. With Beast Castle, the enemies there are also easy to dispose of, and Darkthorn can be a menace, but Zidane could do what Sora did and use the chandelier to attack him for big damage. And Vivi can use two spells in quick succession, and with this onslaught of attacks, Darkthorn is finished. Even in Olympus, Cerberus, Hades, and the Hydra wouldn't be able to stop this team. Cerberus and the Hydra may be a bit tricky just because of how massive they are, but we've seen this team fight enemies that were much bigger than them, and they could still deal enough damage to put them down. And while Vivi and Garnet may not be that fast, the combination of protective magic and offensive magic would be too much for their enemies. Vivi could even cast Doomsday, which would end both the Hydra and Cerberus when they're hit by it. In the Caribbean, all the pirates are very susceptible to magic, so Vivi is going to shine here. It'll make Zidane and Garnet's job easier too when they're all perma-stunned and can't fight back. So again, the Disney worlds won't be an issue for this team. Once we get to Demyx, Garnet could just summon Odin, who would deal enough damage to cripple Demyx and the water clones, with Zidane and Vivi applying pressure to him. The next big boss for them would be Zaldin. Applying Shell and Protect to everyone on the team to reduce incoming damage would be beneficial for the team, and with them entering their powered up states, that being their transforms, they should be able to output enough damage that even Zaldin wouldn't be able to stave it off. Similarly, this is how they would defeat Xigbar as well. Vivi's magic could just hit Xigbar for free when he tries to snipe at them from afar, and Luxord should lose to Zidane because if anybody could outsmart a card player, it would be a thief of his skill. Sykes might be a problem, but Garnet could just use Float on herself and the party members to evade his barrage of ground attacks. And Stop is going to come in handy here for getting free damage on Sykes. Now for the big boss, Xemnas. Zidane may not look it, but he has access to some heavy damaging moves that could really put the hurt on Xemnas. Moves like Tidal Flame, Shift Break, Stellar Circle, Grand Lethal, and even more. All these attacks would do massive damage to Xemnas, defense that Xemnas wouldn't be able to guard against it. Not to mention, the way in which Zidane attacks and moves isn't something Xemnas would be used to, and it would annoy and frustrate him, throwing him off on trying to counterattack him. So Zidane should take this fight. As for the final few matches against Xemnas, to bring it up yet again, he's a stationary target with only a few attacks to knock them off balance, and it won't do much to them, especially with Garnet's heals and protective magic. Zidane and Vivi would output enough damage to take him down in each of his forms. The final fight may very well be the hardest, but this team could still pull the win off. The hardest part of this fight may very well be the end, as Garnet and Vivi would lack the time needed to cast and aren't adept enough to fend off that many attacks coming from all those different directions at once. If the both of them were about to fall, Zidane could use Sacrifice to restore both of them to full HP and MP, and once the move ends, they could just revive Zidane. So while it is a weird workaround, this team should be able to make it through as well. Now with FF10, I didn't want to break these two up. Even though I could have made a separate FF10 2 team, I never played that game, so this team is going to be Tidus, Yuna, and Auron. So for this team, just pay Yojimbo and profit. Thanks for watching. This was me, just Nathan. I'm kidding. Kind of. So even if you haven't played FF10 and only played Kingdom Hearts 2, you know who Auron is. His amazing sword skills aren't to be with. And Tidus is no slouch himself, with some fun attacks to boot. And Yuna can summon Yojimbo. Okay, and she can summon some of these other cool guys too. Pretty much following what's been shown with the other teams already, none of the Disney worlds would be an issue for this team. Hell, since we're going by FF10 logic, Auron could just slap Cerberus into the sun. He's clearly capable of it. The fight with Demyx would probably be a blast for Tidus since he loves his Blitzball so much. And they have Yojimbo. And then when fighting Xaldin, using slow on him and then haste on themselves would greatly decimate him with the speed difference. Or you could decimate him with some money. Now when we make it to Xigbar, it'll very much be the same strategy, using slow and haste. And if things were to get a bit dicey, Tidus could use his overdrive techniques like sword play, spiral cut, slice and dice, just to name a few, which would do enough to defeat Xigbar. But if not, you could always summon. As for Luxord, again, he doesn't have anything in his arsenal that can stop Tidus, and Auron could match Sykes in physical strength, while Yuna casts protective spells and keeps everyone healthy. This would leave Tidus free for him to attack Sykes in any way he wants. And then Yuna could just pay Yojimbo. Okay, let me explain why I keep bringing this guy up. You see, in Final Fantasy X, you can just pay this guy some money, and then he will one-shot anything he cuts, even bosses. So if you ever run into an issue, just make sure you have some pocket change on you. Now the one-on-one fight between Tidus and Xemnas would be interesting, since Tidus could have access to time spells, which is just intrinsic to how FF10 can be with how the characters can basically be however you want them to. They aren't stuck to doing one thing only. That being said, Tidus's offensive capabilities and overdrives do give him an edge against Xemnas, and with access to spells, he should be able to take the victory. With Xemnas' next couple of battles, there is no threat to this team for the same reasons as the previous teams I've mentioned. The last final battle would be doable, and Yuna could just summon Bahamut or Yojimbo. And with Auron and Tidus constantly attacking Xemnas, he won't be able to fight back accordingly, although it would be interesting to see how Auron would interact with Xemnas, considering Auron is a friendly ghost. So this team can make it to the end as well. So from what I suspected and what came to be, every Final Fantasy team can clear Kingdom Hearts 2. I was introduced to much of Final Fantasy through Kingdom Hearts 1, and people who played the Final Fantasy games always told me how underpowered they are in the Kingdom Hearts series, and after playing a ton of Final Fantasy games over the years, I'm inclined to agree. Kingdom Hearts does show off a few cool things they're capable of, but if they were all at their peak, Sora could just take a long break and just let them handle everything. That's part of the reason I jumped straight into KH2 with them, because I knew KH1 would be too easy for them to clear, and they still made it through Kingdom Hearts 2 as well. The abilities, magic, and summons these characters have access to are just on another level that the enemies of Kingdom Hearts 2 can't compete with. So this is a first, but all the teams made it through. But what did you all think though? Do you think any of the teams should have failed? And I've got a question for you. Which team do you think would have cleared the game the fastest? Now it's time for me to deep dive into some more Final Fantasy myself. Thanks for watching, and as usual, this was me just nathing out. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and if you made it all the way to the end to hear this, your prize is more crossovers. So if you want some more fun, check out what's on screen right here. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon. So I'll be creating teams from Final Fantasy VII, 8, 9, and 10.